turbine guy coming back at you here at the Navarre Water Tower and fire station. A brand new thing going on, and we'll be talking about that fire station in just a little bit. But today, I'm here with Bob Tunheim, who has graciously decided to support our community and run for mayor. Now, I'm happy about that myself. I've had a chance to sit down and talk to Bob, and I know Orono Mayor Walsh very well. And by the way, I offered Orono Mayor Walsh this exact same opportunity. Come on the Turbine Guy channel, let the people know who you are, but I think he was afraid to show up, specifically because I would be asking the wrong questions, at least the wrong questions for him. So here we are, Bob.
All right.
Nice to meet you. After all, it turns out Bob is actually living in the house right next door to the house I grew up on in North Arm.
That's right.
So we've got a little bit of past neighborhood history going on there. Anyways, Bob.
Well before my time there, but yeah.
Yes, it was well before his time. Vickermans lived there then.
That's right.
Some people will know
right.
that.
Yeah.
So what brought you to Orono, and tell us all a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I grew up in a little town called New Fulton, 350 people strong up in the northwest corner of the state, and moved down here after college to get a graduate degree, an MBA, and then a law degree. And so my wife and I, when our kids started to get to school age, we were living in Minneapolis near Lake of the Isles, and we were looking for a little bit more of a community like we grew up in, smaller communities. She's from Walker, Minnesota. And we started looking around for good public schools in a place that seemed a little less Minneapolis than where we were in.
Sure.
and found Orono, loved it, built a home out here, raised our 3 kids here. But I would say the real initial draw was the school system.
By the way, supporters right there just jogging right by.
So yeah, and we have loved every bit of the 27 plus years that we've lived out here. It was a great place to raise a family.
Now, first thing I really want to ask you, and I've been dying to, there's all kinds of rumors, potential lies, other things going on about when you were on the school board and what was going on during certain times. And I'd like you to kind of explain what was really happening, because from what I understand, you were the head of the school board.
Well, I was the chair of the board. That's correct. I was on the board for 13 years, the last 7 as board chair. During most of those years, we would be lucky to have 1 or 2 people come to watch our school board meetings. Not exactly exciting stuff.
You know what? That's the way the Orono council meetings used to be, people. There'd be 5 or 10 people that showed up, and they usually had specific business.
That's right. So we went into the COVID time frame, and I think there was a lot of political operatives that were pushing people to go to school board meetings, because it wasn't just in Orono, it was all over the area where people were encouraged to go to school boards and complain about masking rules. So we went from that couple of people at every meeting to well over 100. We had to move the meetings to the auditorium, and when we were taking public comments, much like the city council does, we were just put in a position of listening to people's complaints and or their positive things they had to say. After several meetings where we went well over an hour of people, basically telling us the same thing, that they didn't like our masking, the fact that we were requiring their kids to mask in school. We ended up changing that to a listening session where we could have conversation, where we were less than a quorum of the board, so we could have give and take with people. And unfortunately, very few people showed up. But one of the reasons we had to move to that is people were definitely afraid. School board members, some members of the public were afraid to come to our meetings. And so we were looking at maybe not even having a quorum of the board because people were afraid. People were being physically threatened in the parking lot. And all of this because we were, I thought, taking a very thoughtful approach to masking. We were following the guidelines that were set out by the Department of Education and the Department of Health that really tied masking decision making into the rate of infections in our area. And so when we went over that rate, we looked very closely at it and decided that we needed to require masking until the rate came back down again. If we hadn't done that, I'm really afraid that the school would have had to close down on several occasions, which area schools had to do under the rules that we were
So
under.
what you're saying is there were a lot more things to consider than just whether or not people like the idea or not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you had the Department of Education to think about, you had the school system to think about, and you had to balance all of these things and try to make what sounds like the most pragmatic decision.
That's exactly right.
I'm sure you appreciated the input from everybody.
Of course, yes.
Which is what you would do at the city council.
That's right. You know, and that's a great point.
It's a real pertinent question. Are you going to leave public comments at the end, and are you going to have a big gavel too?
Well, I don't know about the gavel, but we will definitely bring the public comments to the beginning, because we need to hear from people before we make decisions, not after they're already done.
And it leads you to believe the decisions are already made, and it doesn't matter what people have to say.
That's exactly right.
And all that does is alienate people.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Right. There's some other important things going on in this community. Let's start with the parks.
Okay.
It seems to me that the city of Orono is attempting to overdevelop all the parks we have. And I said this to Miss Ricks. I said, the thing is, we've got an overpopulation issue going on in this city. There's a lot of deer around. We got coyotes coming in now. There's wild turkeys everywhere. And we all know the ducks and geese. I mean, oh my God, the geese, right? And so we do have an issue with that. And if we start, because all these properties are getting built up now. There's no such thing as a safe house on Lake Minnetonka for not getting knocked down and getting bigger.
Right.
And these critters need a place to go.
Right.
And if we overdevelop all these parks and make them all user-friendly, where do the critters go?
In my backyard, frankly. And any given day, I've got 8 or 9 deer, and now the turkeys have moved in. And unfortunately, we haven't seen too many coyotes, but the fox are around quite a bit. That's one of the things that I've heard a lot from people when I've been door knocking in the community, that they're concerned about some of the plans that are being made for different parks, and that's not what they were originally designed to do, but based on the intentions of the donor that donated the land. We need to spend a lot more time thinking about what our parks really should be all about. We definitely want them to be used. You know, I think there is a problem with overdevelopment of them.
Now, let's get to some of the fun topics.
Okay.
Let's start with that Public Works Taj Mahal we have up there.
Yeah.
And how that was shoved through, no public comment, no public input, all of this. And now we've got this huge building we just don't need.
Right.
What's your opinion?
Yeah, well, I went through it on a tour with my Rotary Club, and a lot of eyes were very large when we walked through there. It's like, this is way more than what we need for the size of our community. And I went back and took a look at some of the early kind of discussions at the council about this, which were few, but it sounded like they maybe thought they needed an additional 20% more space.
Yeah.
The current building is not that old, and it's in pretty good shape. And the city owns the land behind it. So you would think that would have been the first go-to to say, well, we can add 20% onto this building and solve our needs. I didn't see any discussion of that.
Correct.
It was all, let's build a new one, but let's build a new one that's 20% larger, and it's maybe going to cost $5 or $6 million. Well, when all is said and done, $16 million in new bonding isn't enough to pay for it. The excess fees that we're paying for water, sewer, stormwater have been plowed into that building, $1 million a piece. And we're still not done.
And those fees just keep skyrocketing.
Yeah, they do.
And the city of Orono hid this because we used to have to pay quarterly.
Right.
Now we're paying monthly to kind of pretend like it's less, even though it's doubled or more.
Yeah, no, I think mine are up 70% in just a few years in terms of what we pay for, and we aren't even on the water system. So,
us either. Well, we're in the sewage system, but that's
the sewage system, yeah. But
that's
we have our own well. So anyway, yeah, those fees are really irksome.
Okay, let's forget the fees because the fees are kind of little minor deals, right?
Yeah.
I just saw your video on the taxes.
Yeah.
How yours went up 100%.
Yeah.
I did my own video showing that in the last 2 years alone, our Orono taxes, just due to Orono, went up 47% in
Yeah.
2 years.
Well, you got off good because ours have gone up 56% in 2 years.
No, there you go. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm lucky, folks. Now, here's a big problem with this, and this is what really frustrates me that the current, I'll call them regime, doesn't care about. I got a really good friend, Nancy, the dock lady, and she can't afford to live here. She has to rent out one dock space and go through a rigmarole just to get the money for that, just to pay her taxes.
Right.
When they're raising her taxes double digits every year, where's she going to go?
Yeah.
She isn't going to be able to stay in her family home she grew up in anymore. And they don't care about that. They're chasing people out. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I door knocked at Nancy's house, and I had a very nice conversation with her. Sweet lady.
Yep.
Talked about the fact that she had to do a reverse mortgage to be able to stay in her house, and I think probably her most significant expense of the year is her property taxes.
Yep.
She's on a fixed income and has very little money to spend, and that ever increasing property tax is a huge burden, and that's just not right.
And the problem is, it's not just going up for Orono; it's going up for Minnesota too. You know, and maybe if Orono's was going down, instead of them both going up, she'd have a shot at it.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and Orono's, there's no reason. No reason.
Yeah.
Now, best and for last, where are we standing?
We are standing in front of the
fire station.
makeshift fire station.
Orono Fire Station
But
right here.
It's interesting to note that it's all locked up and you can't get anywhere near it.
Who out there has ever seen a fire station that's locked up from the public? Anywhere. Ever. Even in New York City, downtown, and in certain parts of LA where it's dangerous to be, you can still walk up to the fire station and get help if you need it.
Yeah.
Not in Orono.
Right. Yeah.
And this is crazy. So we spend all this money on this makeshift fire station just to get by.
Yeah.
We're spending all this money trying to create a fire department.
Right.
The projections we're being given are fantasy because they're so low, or if they're even being given.
Right.
But the real projections coming from their numbers literally show we're talking not just a mere 20 million like for the public works, we're talking 40 to 50 million dollars for this adventure.
Right.
I mean, what do you think needs to happen?
Yeah, well, you know, from the beginning I've sort of said, you know, I don't know that much about this. I'm going to keep an open mind, but as I get deeper into it and see all the dollars being spent, and the fact that there really wasn't a service problem we were trying to solve to begin with, we're actually creating maybe more of a service problem in the way that we're handling it right now, and it goes totally against the trend around the country, really around the world, where communities of our size are banding together with our neighbors to provide essential services like fire. And it only makes sense. The equipment is so much more expensive.
Yep.
It's so much more complicated. So it's not like when my dad was a volunteer firefighter in New Fulton and the whistle would go off and everybody drop what they're doing and run to the fire station and go, we'll toss some water on something to put out a fire. It's a lot more complicated, a lot more difficult to find people. That's one of the reasons that Orono's been held in contempt of court a couple times, is we are doing our best to try to find people for this fire department, and it's really tough to find them without going to Long Lake to ask them to come and join us in violation of a court order. So it all makes me scratch my head as to why we're doing this and to begin with, and I think serious consideration needs to be given to going the other direction and talking with our neighbors and maybe talking about how we might pool our resources.
Doing this for a city of 8,000.
Right.
I mean, really? That much money for that?
Right.
All right, now I'm going to let you wind up, and what I'm going to want you to explain to the people of Orono is what's the difference between you and Dennis Walsh?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of differences, I think, but I am not doing this for any sort of hidden agenda. I really love this community, and couldn't sit idly by as I watched some of the chaos that was going on in City Hall, some of the decisions that were being made, the taxes continuing to rise. I've got a skill set that I was able to hone on the school board, and I think I can bring civility back to City Hall, some measured decision making, some data-driven decision making,
And maybe
That's my
slow
style.
some of this stuff
That's right,
down.
yeah.
Not be in such a hurry.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm hoping enough people out there are happy to hear that, so that we can do something different in this community, and that we can start coming together, not just with ourselves, but let's start making up to Long Lake. Let's start working with the other communities and make this Lake Minnetonka, not Orono.
That's right. Well said.
All right. Well,
Thank you, Jay.
Turbine Guy signing off with Bob.
All right. Thank you.